Hey guys! So, in this video we are going to talk a little bit about BDD, or Behavioral Driven Development, so let's get into it. Now, BDD, what the hell? What's the difference between BDD and TDD? Are we just making up these abbreviations? No, we're not, but this is a little bit of it's a subtle difference that I hope I can shed some light on. And hopefully I can also relate to you when I think, or rather the strongest use case that I see for BDD, or Behavioral Driven Development. So, let's define something first and foremost. The semantics, or the idea of BDD is to test a behavior of something as opposed to of the concrete implementation. Okay, so what does that mean? This is like, in my personal opinion, the problem where when people try to define BDD, they kind of just go and they get too academic about it. Let me explain to you how I personally view BDD, or the most concrete use case that I see for BDD. Because the thing is that I'm certain that somebody's going to watch this and give me a bunch of semantics of like, what does it actually mean to do behavioral driven development? Does it mean this? Does it mean that? That's great. I'm sure that there's tons of other content out there that is going to give you all the theory, all of the like ideas behind BDD, but I'll give you the way that I've been using it professionally, and the only time I've actually seen anyone use it successfully. So, one of the main things that you will notice when you start working as a professional software developer is that as you progress through features, as you deliver more and more stuff, you will find that very often you're changing behavior and things about an already existing feature. This is very common at larger scale, where it's not so common necessarily that you always add a new feature. If you're building something from scratch, that's usually fairly safe. Adding code is always easier than changing code. But when you start changing code, that's where you get into what I call a little bit of a risk situation. This is especially true for loosely typed languages such as PHP and JavaScript, where you don't have a type system, because when you're changing something, you always risk of creating regression. Regression means that you have a feature or you changed something for some reason, and now something that used to work one way is no longer working that way. Now, in a test-driven development style where you have unit tests covering all of your different functions, so if you change, say, one function over here, and that breaks a function down here, your unit test should tell you that, hey, you changed something about this function over here, and now this function is broken. Or ideally, you changed something about one function, and you forgot that it's supposed to work in a certain way, and there's a bunch of unit tests testing that function, making sure that it works in an expected way. So now you have an alert telling you that, hey, you broke something, make sure that this is working before you add your new feature, right? That's at the low level. So test-driven development is for a function. Behavioral-driven development is for your entire application. It's for your entire flow. So the way it works is that you have an automated test. Say since let's just assume that you're on the web, you will most likely be familiar with things such as flows. You have a sequence of events. Let's say that you have a web shop. Your user wants to be able to register and pick a product, put that in their cart, and then pay for the product. That's a flow. That's a user story. That's something that a user goes through in order to buy something on your site. That's where behavioral driven development comes in. So a BDD test will go through that flow. It will actually simulate a user clicking, doing all the spinning up your application, basically a fake version, if you will, and click through all of these steps. The automated test will register as create a new user account. The test will then add a product to the cart and then pay for the product. That's what BDD is. Do you see the difference? TDD is for function level testing, like at the code level. BDD is for flows. It's for testing your entire application. Now, there are quite a few of these test runners out there, and there are many ways of doing behavioral development, or BDD. My personal favorite is to use something such as Gherkin. Gherkin is a pseudo language which allows you to create feature files. You can check out, if you're in JavaScript land, for example, check out Cucumber.js. It's probably my favorite BDD style of working. I've used it in a few projects and to massive success. Basically, the idea is that you have a pseudo language that everybody, like any person, can understand and read, and then you sit down with yourself and your stakeholders, and you define down what your feature is actually about, and then Cucumber will generate test cases for you so that you can then use something like Puppeteer or some other web driver or headless browser, whatever you want to use, in order to simulate a user going through all of these flows, right? So that's the idea behind BDD. And the thing about BDD is that it's very, unfortunately, it's fairly costly to try to cover your entire application with BDD test is extremely costly. And the only time I've ever seen this be a really good idea to have like 100% coverage with BDD test was when I was working for Ticketmaster. And the reason why is because the product itself catered to tons of users. It was the same product with a bunch of feature toggles where the behavior of the project would change depending on what configuration you had. And you can imagine if you wanted to manually test all the variations and all the combinations of configurations in such a large application, I mean, it wouldn't be possible. So doing 100% BDD coverage, or just doing behavior-driven development 100% in that scenario is a great idea. It's not a great idea for a smaller company or a small startup or something like that. That's where I like to have what I call a pragmatic approach, where I actually made this happen at my company. It's we still have one or two flows to go through. So we need to be able to move quickly, and BDD takes a lot of time. So BDD is perfect for really big, large international projects where they have a lot of money and they are really focused on making sure that everything works. That's great. If the project is big, has the money, and it's really complicated, BDD 100% all the way. Trust me, it will work very well for you. I'm fairly certain. And if you're not in that scenario, you can still leverage the benefits of having BDD, but you should be pragmatic about it. What I will say to my coworkers, and this is what we did, I told them, all right, who is our king? And they go, what do you mean, our king? What is our main feature flow? In other words, what's the 99, like most of our application users are using our feature, one of our features. Like, what's the most used feature? Well, it's this, and that. Okay, cool. Then we will create one test for each of these flows, the common case, just to simulate a normal interaction for a user, just a normal user story. And that's going to be good enough. And so far, that's actually helped us catch most of our issues. We don't have to cover every single, we don't care about creating BDD tests for going to the settings and fixing the settings. That's not so important. But to make sure that our users can finish a purchase or make an order, that sort of thing, that's really useful, because those things, I mean, if you work on anything and you for some reason create a situation where you broke that's a critical system failure on your part. It's going to cost your company a lot of money. So investing a little bit of time to writing something that will make sure that every time you push code to production, hopefully you have a CI pipeline that will just run your test. It's great. It feels very, for you as a developer as well, it feels really nice to know that, oh yeah, I'm a little bit unsure about how this is going to play out, but at least I have a bunch of tests that make sure that I didn't break one of the most important features. That's how I do BDD, and all I can say is to you is I have a great deal of great experiences working with Gherkin and Cucumber.js. And also in PHP, there are some really nice support for it as well. And other languages has it well. So I highly recommend it. Have a look at it and have a great day.